So, yeah, today's seminar is on improving relationships. And actually, you know what? Nothing's more important than our relationships. Because it doesn't matter whether we're talking about relationships with our partners, relationships with our friends, relationships with our bosses, relationships just with the people around us. Everything in our life is about our relationships with other people. And, you know, often our happiness or our unhappiness is quite dependent on our relationships with other people. I mean, if we're having a bad relationship with someone, often it creates turmoil in our mind and creates a lot of unhappiness, right? And it's how to overcome that difficulty. But other times when things are going really well in our relationships, especially with our partners, the world seems like so wonderful and so great. And yet in a day it can turn around, right? And it can just be so bad. It can go from heaven to hell, right? So, yeah, having the ability to understand relationships and improve relationships and keep relationships on a beautiful, you know, nice even keel is a real skill for us to have that would really help our happiness and improve our life. So this seminar was actually taken or created from Master's book here called Stress-Free Living, and chapter 2 was about improving relationships, and so part of it is out of that, ways on improving human relationships, and chapter 3 was on a heart of blessing. And so I've taken these 2 chapters to create this. So if you want to read it more fully, this book here, Stress-Free Living, chapters 2 and 3. So there's actually 4 points that will be made up today, to keep it nice and simple. 4 points about what we're going to use to improve our relationships. And then at the end of it all, there's a meditation that you may not have even done before from Master Okawa called Harmonizing Human Relationships. So, and that one, there's a bit of a talk from him and a bit of a meditation. So the talk and the meditation from him last about 20 minutes. So, yeah, so this is going to be basically, at the end of the day, there'll be 4 points that we can really understand and focus on to improve our relationships. So the first one is to realize that everyone's perspective or perception is different. Everybody's perception or perspective is different, and you know, we have got a certain way of looking at things always. You know, I mean, I was talking to Harry before, and we were talking about you know, friends and their way ask you a question and get an answer, and then their way of looking was different from your way of looking. So suddenly it creates a moment, right? You know, just because our ways were different. So, yeah, the first thing is to recognise that everybody's perspective is different, and therefore we can really try to also see other people's perspective. Realise we have our own perspective, of course, but if we can try to see another person's perspective in any time, any situation, that can really help things. So Master said, how you view or feel when you look at situations will vary completely from one person to another. No one is exactly the same. This is the starting point of all problems that occur in human relationships. This is the starting point of all problems. So this is a big one, understanding other people's perspective. So if there's a problem in our relationship with our partner or our boss or a friend or even just somebody on the street, if we can try to think, what's their perspective? How are they seeing things? Why is this problem happening? My perspective and their perspective is obviously different, because if we had the same perspective, we'd both be agreeing. So that's the first point, is to be able to recognise this point, that the reason I'm having a problem is they're looking at something one way, I'm looking at it another way. Obviously, you know, I can't control their mind, so I can't make them see my perspective, right? But I can try to see their perspective. Actually, it reminds me of, I remember once learning about the French when it came to doing debates. The French way of debating in the olden days was that if 2 people were having a debate, one would put forward his view, and the other person, before they actually gave their view, they would have to explain what the other person's view was. Right? So it's quite a good way of having a debate. So if I want to have a debate with someone, I explain my point of view, and then the person, rather than just telling me their point of view, they explain to me, oh, so what you're saying is this, and they explain carefully what my point of view was, and then they give their point of view, and then my job would be to say, okay, so what you're saying is this. If we could do that in our relationships when we're having issues, right, listen to what they say, oh, so what you're saying is this, And they can say, no, well, not quite. What I was saying was this. Oh, okay, I understand what you're saying. Well, what I was saying was this. And they say, oh, okay. So what you're saying, yeah, okay. And then finally, you could both see each other's perspectives and make a more complete perspective based on the two coming together. So let's hear a short lecture from Master Okawa talking about how perspectives cause suffering, different perspectives cause suffering.
I would like to start by discussing the subject of freeing yourself from the suffering of taking love. When I look at the pain that exists in this world, I see that much of it springs from people not being able to get what they want. The pain of being unable to get what you want is in fact the pain of not being loved by others, or not being appreciated. Be it emotional or physical pain, when you feel you are not being appreciated, you suffer. If we are talking about emotions, appreciation can be expressed by the kind words, thoughts, or actions of others, or by respect or social status. In relation to material existence, appreciation can be expressed by food or clothing, income, a car, a house, etc. Generally speaking, appreciation is not something that we achieve for ourselves. Instead, there is an element for receiving from others. And if we focus on this fact too much, it results in pain. So we can say that in the majority of cases, human suffering is the result of people feeling that they are not being given much by others. Some people may think, I work hard, but my wages remain low. Or I am good at my job, so why don't I get a promotion? Others may say, I work my fingers to the bone, but my partner and children do not appreciate me at all. If we look at the source of people's suffering, we see that it is in fact dissatisfaction with the way they are treated, or the frustration born of being unable to achieve a particular aim. In most cases, people feel, although I am doing my best, no one appreciates me, or the people around me treat me badly. If it is a physical issue, people are often able to resign themselves to a situation. But if the issue is emotional, particularly if it is something to do with interpersonal relationships, it is difficult to get over the pain. The reason for this is that we are helpless to change the way other people think.
Yeah, so this original part was the perspective of, oh, I do so much, but no one appreciates me, right? So it may be that, this is the perspective of really someone thinking about how much they're doing and how little they're getting back. And as you know, in Happy Science, this teaching is really, that's about taking love, a person. So if we changed our perspective in that situation, that, oh, how lucky I am to have this family, how lucky I am to have my partner, how lucky I am to have my children, I want to support them, or how lucky I am to have my job, I want to work hard, how lucky I am to have this job where I earn an income every week. It may not be my ideal job, but at least I have a job, I earn an income to support my family. So, oh, I'm so lucky. So I want to work hard for my boss. I appreciate my boss. We show our boss our gratitude, right? And as our perspective to our job and our family changed, people would feel that and see that, and actually things would change, our environment would change, and there'd be a lot more happiness in our lives. So this is the first stage, the perspective one, is to recognize that. And also to know that many different viewpoints exist leads to the improvement of human relationships. I mean, for instance, the relationship with our boss. If we could realize that my boss has a different perspective, maybe I'm not getting on well with my boss, but then if I look at my boss's perspective, maybe my boss doesn't really feel as if I'm, achieving my full capacity. Maybe my boss thinks I'm actually, slacking off a little bit. I might feel like I'm turning up every day, doing my 40 hours, and I'm only getting paid this much, so why should I work anymore? That might be my attitude, and my boss is looking and thinking, well, my business is only just surviving. I'm struggling here, and my staff don't really seem to care too much, and no one's really working very hard. Unfortunately, might have to start thinking about some layoffs. So my boss's perspective could be that, man, my business is barely surviving, and my perspective could be that I'm not getting paid nearly enough. This boss boss is ripping me off. It's completely different perspectives, right? They both could be actually based on a bit of reality. It could be that I'm being underpaid, but it could also be that my boss's company is on the verge of going under, and therefore I wouldn't have a job at all. So each person is looking at their perspective. So if we can realise there's different perspectives and try to see the other person's perspective, then if I was the employee, I could say, hey, my bosses, things aren't going too well. I really need to find a way to help him. Maybe I need to put in a few extra hours, not even get paid for it, because I want the company to survive. And when the company starts to go better, the boss will see how much I contributed to that, and he'll want to promote me because he'll see the sort of person I was and how I was. I engineered, helped with the new growth of the company, and I'll be rewarded in the future. So suddenly things could change just through that change in that perspective. I mean, it's also the same in our relationship with our parents. See, for instance, here it says, if you strongly consider your perspective to be everything and there is no other way to see things, it will be extremely difficult for you to improve your human relationships. So if we really are set with our thinking, this is the way it is, this is my way of thinking is the right way, it can never change. So it's a matter of being flexible. Flexibility in our relationships is such a key to being able to have a good relationship. And that doesn't matter whether it's with our family, with our children, with our partner, even with people we meet. Brand new person we meet on the street, we're talking to them, especially if we're trying to do business. We want to be able to see another person's perspective. If we can see another person's perspective, it's going to be much more likely that we can create a bond with that person and be able to do some sort of business with them. Actually, Master said in one of his talks, understanding another person is synonymous with loving another person. If you can understand another person, that means you can love another person. And that really is to be able to see different people's viewpoints. If you can see someone's viewpoints, you can understand their way of thinking. So let's hear a little bit more of the same lecture from Master Okawa.
Love, particularly in the context of human relationships, refers to what exists between men and women, and there are also other kinds of love. In most cases, the suffering that it brings is born of a desperate craving for love or a delusory attachment. This springs from the desire to make others do as you would wish, and is often observed in parent-child relationships. It is often the case that children want their parents to do something, or wish that their parents had more power. Once children have grown up, as adults they may continue to feel that their current suffering has its roots in their parents' lack of status in their childhood. They complain, for example, if only my parents had been richer, if only my parents had had a higher status. My parents were too provincial. My parents were already old when I was born. Or, my parents were always sick. Others complain, my parents were divorced. My parents lived separately. One of my parents died, so I was brought up in a single-parent family. Or my father had a mistress, so my parents were forever fighting. People are often dissatisfied with their parents and have different kinds of complaints about them. Even after they have grown up, the root of this discontent remains, and it is impossible to remove it altogether.
Yeah, so this is something, all of us are adults now, but of course through our childhood we experience different things. And it's really important, I think, if we want to have good relationships with our children, that we can also have good relationships with our parents, even if they've passed away, in our hearts, that we feel gratitude to them for everything they gave us. And, no parents are perfect. This is the funny thing. We sort of look up, as we're growing up, we expect our parents to be perfect and provide us with everything. And yet when we become parents, we realise it's impossible to be perfect, and obviously the kids complain because they don't get enough from the parents, and the parents don't provide them maybe enough love or enough money or, or resources or time, whatever. But it was the same for our parents. So the same challenges that, you guys have as parents, your parents had as well, So if we can, once again, go back and remember when we were kids and have that perspective of how it was for our parents and appreciate them. I know last week, Father-Son seminar was a lot about gratitude. if you can feel gratitude for everything the parents gave you, even though of course it's impossible to give everything, and actually receiving everything isn't good for us anyway, but but to have the gratitude that your parents did the best they could in whatever environment they were in, and also with their way of thinking and their perspective they had, and just thank you very much for getting me to be here now. It's because of you. So then we can feel a lot of love for our parents, and even if we feel that our parents weren't ideal or perfect, if we can change our perspective and just understand they did the best they could. I mean, I look back to my dad, and I'm really grateful to my dad. He is a really easygoing sort of a character, and because of that, it let me become very much myself. He wasn't a dominating sort of a person. But the flip side of that was he wasn't much of a go-getter when it came to business. So he worked in a factory, and I remember going and visiting him in Reed Rubber, and he hated his job. But he was working in a tyre factory, and I still remember the smell of going into the tyre factory. Sometimes he'd let me borrow his car, so I'd go there to pick up the car, and I'd walk through the factory to get the keys. And he'd be in the factory there, and there he was with these, it was on a roller mill thing, these rollers would be turning, and he's just getting these big pieces of like rubber and putting them into the mill, and they all finally work themselves out into these big flat sheets, and it's really quite hot and smelly, and then he would work these sheets off and put them on a table. But he'd do that, and he worked overtime. He'd work often 12-hour days, 12-hour shifts, so because to support the family. But he didn't like working. He hated working. My dad was so laid back, he'd be rather playing tennis with his mates all day long if he could. So here he was doing something he really didn't want to do, right? And yet my mum, I can remember as I was growing up, my mum's such a lovely lady. She's, to me, she's an angel in life. But yet I could see the friction with my mum and my dad at that time. And at that stage I was about maybe 20. They split up when I was about 20. But even for like this, 5 or 6 years before they split up, I can remember times when Mum wasn't happy, and maybe I wasn't doing something quite right, and she'd say, "You're just like your father." Now, so that could create in me a little negative feeling towards my father, but it never did, because I could always look back and I could think, wow, Dad works so hard. He hates work. He doesn't want to work, but he's going to work and just to support us as a family, because if it wasn't for us as a family, he wouldn't have to do all this work. He could do whatever he wanted all day long, So I was always grateful that he was Dad going to work in a factory that he didn't want to be at, just so that he could support the family. Yeah, so I think this is it, where we can have a perspective of seeing, another person's life through their eyes. We can always find something to be grateful for, and in that gratitude, we feel love for them, and we want to give back to them. Yeah, so this is the first point about creating good relationships, is being able to understand another person's perspective and see things from their perspective, right? And then from their feelings of empathy, feelings of understanding, feelings of love will well up for that person. So that's stage one. Second part is to be able to look at the strengths of others as much as possible. Of course, everybody has good points and bad points. Nobody's perfect. Everybody has strengths and weaknesses. But if we focus on people's strengths, we see the good side of them. As I was just saying about my dad, the strength was that he made the effort to go and work 12 hours a day in a factory that he didn't want to be in, because he felt it was the responsible and the right thing to do for his family. Okay, maybe for the weakness from my mum's perspective was that came the weekend when Mum wanted Dad to be involved with the family and take us all off to the beach to go surfing. Dad's saying, I want to go play tennis with my mates. And so he'd go and play tennis, and Mum's thinking, what sort of father are you? You're off now playing tennis instead of taking the kids to the beach. But this was Dad's time out. This was his finally he got a chance to do what he wanted to do. So I would never hold that against him. But because of the perspective between my mum and the dad at the time, it created issues in their marriage, which eventually caused their marriage to come apart. So if they had been able to see, if Mum had seen Dad's perspective maybe a little bit better, then things might have been different for them. Yeah, so if we are able to associate with other strengths, there'll be no bad people. It's when we focus on somebody's weakness that somebody becomes a bad person. I don't like them because of this. But everybody has strengths and everybody has weaknesses. So it's a matter of focusing on their strengths. The Master said in the book, he said, it's important to ponder. This person must have good points or strengths and focus on that aspect of them as much as possible. So when we're doing that, of course, it's natural that we will also recognise that people do have weaknesses, of course. But he said, rather than being unaware and thinking, everybody's perfect, we have to be realistic. He said, rather than being unaware, it's preferable for you to be aware of others' weakness, But even if you were to notice them, make an effort to see them in a carefree manner. So it's like the focus of the eyes. You know, our eyes, we can focus on something, or we can look at a little bit of a blurred look to something. So what we do is when we're looking for the strengths, we really focus on the strengths, and we think about the strength and their good points and admire it and think good things about them for that. But with their weaknesses or their bad points, we just sort of see it, but we don't focus on it. Don't make it such a big issue in our mind. Yeah, this is... Now, of course, when we do notice people's negative points, sometimes we might have something to say, especially if it's in a close relationship, especially if it's a partner, especially if you're a parent with a child, or in a close relationship with a friend. Sometimes you might have a valid criticism, but it's important to be able to distinguish between ill words and valid criticism. And correct the habit of just speaking ill. Some people have a habit of just speaking ill. They just speak ill of other people, and they're constantly seeing people's faults and talking negatively about other people. It's really important to improve relationships to stop doing that. It's for our own happiness and for the improvement of our relationships. Yeah. Because also, you know what, even if you're speaking ill of somebody else behind their back and you're doing it to somebody else, it's a horrible energy. If you're with somebody who's always talking negative about someone else, even if they're not talking to you but they're talking about somebody else behind their back, it's not uplifting, and you don't really want to hang out with people like that. It's more if you're with someone and they're talking something positive about somebody. Oh, this person, they're doing this, it's really great, or they really like this about this person. It's such an uplifting thing, and they're probably talking nice things about you behind your back too. Whereas if they're actually talking negative about people all the time, you think, I wonder what they're saying when I'm not around. So yeah, it's hard to build good relationships with people if people are speaking ill of others. The Master said, you need to do a thorough self-examination into the reason for the criticism, asking yourself whether it is a valid criticism or whether you're just saying it because you're in a bad mood, don't feel well, or are unhappy with something. Because some people just tend to complain. And I think especially in relationships with partners. It's funny, when you get into a relationship with a partner, the person who you're closest with and you love the most in your life, they're the person that you most pick on. They're the person that you're most likely to say mean things to. It's a strange thing, isn't it? The person you love the most. It's the same with parents. The things you say to your parents, like you'd never say that to a friend, because you wouldn't want to say that to your friend because they probably won't want to be your friend anymore. But somehow with partners and parents, we say things that are really quite mean sometimes, and often not true. And it's just because maybe we're in a bad mood or unhappy and we want to make them feel bad and unhappy too. So let's hear Master here talking some more about this.
The wounds to the heart that people suffer during childhood will often come to the surface in different ways after they reach adulthood, which makes for an unhappy life. The reason is that some adults feel because their early life was unhappy and unrewarding, they search for someone to compensate for this, someone to fill the emptiness in their heart. People who lead their lives feeling this way are like a kind of bottomless pit. No matter how much they are given, they demand more. Even if society offers them praise, it is never enough. They always demand more, saying, I want more recognition, more praise. I want higher position quickly, and a higher salary. I want public acknowledgement. There is no end to their demands, and as a result, people tire of them and stop giving praise. The same is true in the home. People who can never be content will be unsatisfied no matter how completely their husband or wife devotes him or herself to them. No matter how their partner exerts him or herself, it will never be appreciated. Instead, they will always point out what is lacking. Of course, this is not to say that she would be happy if he came home earlier every day. If he did, she would then complain that he should get a promotion more quickly. The wife who criticizes her husband for coming home late would be just as quick to criticize him for not getting ahead, not earning enough money. They will pick one point, criticizing their partner. But if this is rectified, they will soon find another cause for complaint. This sort of person will never be satisfied.
Yeah, so this is something to be careful of, to get into this habit of complaining and picking faults, because it doesn't lead to any healthy, happy relationship. So, yeah, the opposite of that would be to as Master said maybe later or as part of this lecture, that, if the husband came home earlier, say, oh, well done, you managed to get home earlier today. That's wonderful. I get more time to spend with you. Let's have a nice evening together. So it's just little things can make such a big difference in a relationship. Okay. So Master said marital discord can be neutralized by blessing your spouse. This is so important in a relationship, and actually also with friends as well, of course, but especially in a marriage, or in a close relationship. If you can bless your spouse and they feel like you are really blessing them and wishing for your happiness rather than complaining all the time, then this is really going to make your relationship so much better. Master said, a heart to bless others is not easily attained, but by making an effort to bless once in a while, you can at least neutralize toxins that have arisen in relationships. The toxins that have arisen in relationships, it's only natural that being with someone every day, so many hours, and encountering so many problems in life. As we know, life is a challenge. As Buddha said, life is suffering, but there's many difficulties. And when you get into a relationship with someone and you're going through it together, you've sort of chosen to take on these challenges and these difficulties together. So that doesn't mean it's all going to be plain sailing. It means there's going to be many of challenges and many problems. But so sometimes there's going to be friction. Sometimes, as we were talking about perspective before, sometimes you'll both have a different perspective, a different way of looking at things. And some of this negativity will create friction in your lives. But if you can have a heart of blessing, so even when that friction builds up sometime you can have some gratitude to your partner, tell them how happy you are to be their partner, how wonderful it is being in this relationship with them, what a wonderful person they are. Any of these toxins that have built up can be neutralized. They can disappear very quickly, just with a few kind words from time to time. So Master talks a little bit about this now, how some relationships where people can be for years and years together and never once do they say a kind word to each other. Yeah. See, these are the things, these are just facts that happen in relationships, but once we're aware of them, and that's in Happy Science, it's about shining the light on it. Once we become aware of it, then we can change it. But if we're just living without knowing we're even doing it, we wouldn't do it if we thought that we were doing it. We wouldn't think, oh, I'm always so mean to my partner, I'm always criticizing my partner, I'm always never looking at my partner's good points. We wouldn't do it if we thought that's what we were doing. But the nice thing with Happy Science when we study the truth like this is we just look at relationships and look at ourselves, and we practice the self-reflection to be able to see what's going on. And since we've decided to be with this person, there must be some nice things about this person. That's why we've decided to be with them. Therefore, we've chosen to create a harmonious relationship and a harmonious family, and since we've made that decision, then this is the way for us to, over a long period of time, make sure that relationship continues in the way that we wanted it in the beginning, at the first place. That's why we chose to be with that person. We wanted to create a nice future together. So let's hear Master here.
It is important to realize that you should abandon the idea that you can only achieve happiness by receiving from others. Once you start to take, there is no end to it, be it in material sense of objects or money, or intangible such as social reputation or fame, or something else like health. People are never satisfied. They are never able to say, "This is great, it is perfect." In most cases, it is you yourself who create your own suffering. So if you have this tendency, you should make an effort to overcome it. Your partner may be 1% or even 10% lacking. But instead of blaming him or her for this 10%, make an effort to concentrate on the remaining 90%. Rather than look for 100% perfection in others, it is important to concentrate on what people do well. If you do this, you will be amazed to find that your view of world changes. So stop wanting to take and be given to, believing happiness can only be achieved through getting. Instead, try to discover how much you are being given and see others' good points instead of their bad. To change your view or your way of thinking is, in fact, the equivalent of the act of giving to others. Instead, they should try to find others' good points, change their way of thinking, and give thanks for what they have been given. So right now, determine to stop taking from others. Look at what you have been given. Perhaps you can think about giving to others or giving something back in return. For instance, if your partner comes home late from work every night, there is a reason for it. Therefore, instead of complaining, try offering your appreciation. Even a small effort like this will make a great difference. If you were to show your gratitude and appreciation, your partner will be more inclined to open his or her heart and talk. First, it is important to realize that no one can achieve happiness as long as they are only ever looking at what is missing. You have already been given a great deal, so start by giving thanks for what you have. The truth is that there is no way of being unhappy in a life where you are giving back. For this reason, if you turn your perspective around and begin loving others or giving to others, you will find that unhappiness disappears from your life and you begin to create happiness. There is no one as happy as those who consider the happiness of others to be their own happiness, whereas those who consider other people's happiness their own unhappiness will find it difficult ever to achieve happiness. People who can find happiness for themselves in seeing even the smallest increase in others' happiness have the mindset of happiness. The pain of taking love generally springs from dissatisfaction in personal relationships, from a belief that you are not receiving what is your due. However, you need to realize that no matter how much you crave what is lacking, this only creates a vicious cycle, generating even more suffering. Suppose, for example, you have held a grudge for a long time against your boss for not appreciating your work. If you pause and ask yourself what you have done to help him get on in the company, you may find that the answer is very little. But despite this, you are only ever concerned about the fact that he has not valued your contribution. Although you may believe you are doing your best, others will think that you are just an egoist, working when you think you are going to get something out of it, but otherwise never exerting yourself. All you know is that despite having done your very best, no one seems to acknowledge your contribution. So it is important to put yourself in the other person's position, and not worry about what you have or have not received, but rather what you have not given or done for them. This is the path to happiness. There are people who have been married for many years, but who have never uttered a single word of appreciation for all that their partner has done for them in that time. If your wife has changed her makeup and looks more attractive, compliment her on it. If your husband comes home 10 minutes earlier than usual, compliment him by saying, "You managed to get home earlier today. You must have worked hard." If you do this, he will realize that you are happy when he can manage to clear his desk early. To improve personal relationships does not cost a single cent. It costs nothing. All that is required is a change of attitude and offering a few kind words. It may require a small amount of energy, but the expenditure of an ounce of energy is not much of a price to pay. In the same way that a person will remember an insult for 10 years or more, they will also remember a compliment. 10 years may pass, and a person will still feel angry over some slight, but the pleasure of a compliment also lasts the same length of time. It takes only a moment to say the effect will continue indefinitely. It requires very little effort, just a change in attitude, and a small concrete demonstration of goodwill. This is important. Looking at the suffering in the world, it is clear that most of it springs from pain caused by attitude of taking love. Rather than concentrating on what you want, think about what you can give to others. Then you will find that as soon as you try doing this, your worries disappear. These are words of enlightenment that have the power to open your eyes.
And, this part here really is back to perspective again, back to the beginning, the perspective of giving love rather than taking love. To think about that I'm in this relationship. Oh, how lucky am I to have met this person that for whatever reason, I have strong feelings for them, feelings of love for this person. And feeling love for a person just feels so wonderful. It's the greatest joy we have in our life when we feel love for a person. I mean, you think when people have children, a lot of that is, it's because of the love. When you think about it, it's quite amazing how people have children, and I know, many of you guys have children, and it's really amazing how you do anything for them, right? I mean, for parents who have children, who love their children, they'll do anything for them. And it's because of this love for those children, right? They love their children so much. But why do they love their children so much? The children are no different from other children, really, except they just happen to be your children. And we know, as we know from the teaching and happy science, everyone has a soul and they existed in the other world before they came to this world, right? So they may not have even been your children in a past life. They may have been a brother or sister or some sort of connection, but as soon as someone's born into this world as being one of your children, there's this bond, there's this feeling of love. I would do anything for you. I would put myself through all sorts of suffering to look after you, right? And it's quite amazing. And this is where God teaches us about love. The feeling of love, even though there's obviously many difficulties in bringing up children and the challenge of worries about children and trying to make sure everything works out for them, but people are willing to go through all of that because of the love for children. But imagine if we could feel that love for all the people around us, and there's no reason why we can't, including our partners, because the same feeling of love for them can exist within us, the same feeling of love that we would love for our children. Yeah, so this is all about having the perspective, that being able to recognize how lucky I am to have someone in my life that I love, right? It's so great. And never forget that. And never start to find the negative, those, like Master said, there might be 10% of our partners lacking, or even 20% of our partners lacking. But instead of focusing on that 10 or 20% where they might have issues that annoy you and create problems, focus on the 80% that you loved in the first place. They didn't not have those problems to start with, but you focused on the good things, and that's why you fell in love with them. So the idea is to focus on those good points, be grateful that they're in your life, and be grateful that you have someone to be able to love. Yeah, and from there, if we start to feel that way, and we're grateful for them being in our lives, and we look for things to compliment them on, then our lives and our relationships go better, and we're much happier. So Master said here, abandon the idea that you can only achieve happiness by receiving from others. So if we're in a relationship and we think we're there because of what I can get, what my partner will do for me, how they're going to make me happy, there's never going to be a feeling of happiness from that. But imagine when you get two people with this wonderful teaching and happy science about the understanding that happiness comes from giving love without any expectations. When two people really truly practice that in a relationship and they feel joy bringing happiness to each other, that is the most perfect relationship that you can have. To be able to both have that same idea that I just want to practice giving love to you without having any expectations, and I'm not receiving my happiness from taking from you. As I said before, Master said, he said in that part, rather than looking for 100% perfection in others, it's important to concentrate on what people do well and try to discover how much you are being given and see others' good points instead of their bad. And there is no one as happy as those who consider the happiness of others to be their own happiness. Isn't that a wonderful truth? Right? There's no one as happy as those who consider the happiness of others to be their own happiness. Once people have that perspective, then all they want to do is generate happiness in the other person, because if they could bring happiness to another person and that happiness makes them feel happy, as they see happiness in their partner increase and it makes them happy, right? This is like perpetual happiness. If ever there was a perpetual energy, here's perpetual happiness. If I can do something that makes someone happy and that makes me feel more happy, that's perpetual happiness, because now all I need to do is to find a way to increase their happiness again, and I can increase my happiness. So if all through my life, once I discover that truth, that happiness comes from bringing happiness to others, and you spend your life trying to bring happiness to others, especially partners, or any relationship where you're with somebody, friends, everything. You do something for your friend, you see them become happy, that makes you happier, right? Then your whole life just becomes an opportunity for happiness, and the more people you know, the more chance there is for happiness. And guess what? You will have more friends. Because if your happiness comes from bringing happiness to your friends, who doesn't want to hang out with a friend who gets happy as they make you happy, right? And you can genuinely see that as my friend did something that made me happy, he genuinely became happy. It's like, oh my gosh, what a great friend I have, right? The opposite of that, as Master said, if you have the tendency towards another person's happiness makes you feel unhappy, this is where jealousy comes into it. Say you had a friend who when something good happened in your life, you know, you got a new job, or you had met a new partner, or something really good happened in your life, and you told your friend, and it was obvious that your friend became a little bit unhappy seeing something good happen in your life. That would be so sad. But, you know, your relationship with that person is not going to improve, right? If you can see that your happiness made them feel a little bit uncomfortable. Yeah, so it's really a key thing to happiness is that another person's happiness should increase our happiness. Okay, well, we were talking before about, you know, complimenting others or seeing people's good points. And, you know, there's always a middle way, always, you know. So we have to be careful as well, because we could start to go to the extreme thinking, oh, I want to bring happiness to other people, I want to say nice things to other people, I want to compliment other people. But we must be honest. We can't then just start saying nice things to other people to pamper their pride and bloat them up and make them feel good if it's not true. So it's really important to speak the truth. But if we are really honestly looking for people's good points and good parts about them, we will have nice things to say that are based on the truth about that person. But if we're just saying it because we want them to like us, or we've got some sort of hidden agenda, I mean, in his book, Master Okawa was talking about this, you know, sometimes it happens in religion. They want to get people to follow their religion, so they will say all these nice things about the person and they make the person feel so great, and, you know, then get them to join their religion, and then later on, once they've joined, they're not so complimentary anymore and they stop saying nice things. They think, hey, what happened to all this nice talk that I got before? You know, people see through it. So it's really important to be genuine in our compliments. But if we are looking and seeing people's divine nature and the nice things about people and their good qualities, it will natural that we will want to tell them, hey, you know, like Yuko with her music, you know, she's gone now, but, you know, I really appreciate her music and I think she's really talented. So often when I hear her play, I say, Yuko, that just sounded really lovely. Thanks very much for playing that music today. It was just great. But it's true. I really believe that. So it's coming from the heart. So compliments should always come from the heart. Yes, the Master said, when you praise someone, you should make sure that you're telling the truth or expressing your true feelings. Even if you were to compliment someone, it cannot be a dishonest or deceptive compliment. Okay, those were the first 2 points that we had today. Was the idea that understanding other people's perspective and looking for people's good points, right? Realizing everybody also has we all are not perfect, and everybody has negative side as well, but looking at that with a soft focus, looking at that, realizing, well, that's part of this soul training, but focusing on the positive side. Well, the third point is, and it might sound a little bit contradictory, but Master said the key to maintaining healthy relationships is to have independent individuals keep a moderate amount of distance from each other. So they can sound like, oh, keep away from each other, keep separate from each other. But, you know, what it means is don't be clingy. You know, you never want to, if you ever meet someone who, as soon as you show them some sort of friendship, next thing they want to be your best friend, next thing they want to be at your house every day, and next thing they're on the phone and, you know, you can't get rid of them. So it's important for each individual to be a separate individual, feeling like an independent person. And I think even in a relationship, I mean, of course in a marriage it's a little bit different because you're with each other all the time. But, you know, sometimes you hear people with the expression of, you know, my other half or my better half, or, you know, you make me complete. I think that's dangerous in a relationship because it puts too much pressure on it. What it should be two independent, happy people come together to share their happiness. I should have found my own inner happiness in myself that I want to share with somebody else. That's back to what I was saying about before, wanting to be with someone because you want to make them happy, right? But so it's not the other way is that you feel like you need to be with somebody to make yourself complete. I'm not complete, and this person makes me complete. There's a danger in that because you'll always feel like, oh, what if they left me? You know, your happiness will never be complete because there'll be always the chance of losing that other person. What if they die? What if they leave me? So it never really gets a chance to become a completely full, complete relationship. But when you have your own independence and they've got their own independence, and you can come together as two people who love each other with your own minds, your own ways of thinking, and your own love for each other, that's really how to have a wonderful, truly complete relationship. So, yeah, like Master said, you know, we have to be able to be independent individuals. And when he says keep a moderate amount of distance from each other, I think he was talking more about just in our general relationships with people on a day-to-day business. You know, but in a marriage, of course, you can't really keep separate distance from each other, but I think it's good to have separate lives, right? To have different interests, to do some different things. I know Deb today, she's off doing something else, and you'll sometimes do different things. If you always feel like you have to be together, if you two people become one person and have to be together, this is also not healthy. So it's nice sometimes to have different interests, to be able to get home and to talk about what you did today or your interest if you've got a different interest. And ideally, if your partner has another interest, you should, as we were talking about before, about taking an interest in your partner, ask them, how was it? What did you do? How was your day? And when they tell you how good their day was and you can see they're happy, you should become happy because you're seeing the happiness in them, and you should be asking them more questions about their day and taking an interest in their day. You know, that's the way to have a healthy relationship with somebody. Yeah. The Master said here, friendships are more likely to succeed between two independent people. So these were the 3 points that we've covered so far to be able to improve relationships. The first was to know that each person has a different perspective. Try to see others' strengths as much as possible, and recognise that everyone has independent characteristics and keep a certain amount of distance from others. So yeah, don't become clingy. Don't try to think my happiness is dependent on being with this person. I'm not relying on anybody. I'm in this world as an individual. I've discovered my own inner happiness, and I want to share my happiness with others. Yeah. So I'm not needing others to make me happy. I'm in this world to bring happiness to others. Well, here is the 4th point, which was actually from chapter 4, and it's all about blessing other people. So the first part of it is about talking about blessing successful people, because if we're talking about relationships, relationships in business, if we want to do well in life, if we want to be successful in life, then we need to be able to have some sort of good relationships with either our bosses or our staff or the people, our business partners, anybody else in life like that. And if we want to do well, the first stage is to be able to bless successful people, right? So if we can see successful people and think, oh, good on you, well done, you've actually, you've got ahead, you've created a wonderful business, and you've now become wealthy, and look, you've got a beautiful big house and a nice car, and you've got all these people working for you. Well done, that's so great, I want to do that too. How did you do it? Now if you met somebody and you were feeling like that, and you were saying to them, I admire you, what you've done is amazing, you've created this wonderful business and you've created so much success in your life, I really admire that, I think that's fun. And in your heart you're generally feeling like, this is great, I'm really blessed this person. And you said to them, how did you do it? How did you start your business? And they're going to want to tell you, right? Because they're seeing that you're genuinely happy for them. If you're feeling jealous for them and you're feeling negative towards them, they're never going to help you, but also you're going to push yourself away from that ideal because you create a negativity towards it. You can never approach something that you feel negative towards. So, yeah. So Master said, it is good to have positive thoughts and a heart of blessing towards those who are successful. Afterwards, those who were blessed will start to give you their helping hand. And if you give your blessing to successful people, you too will be able to attract a similar kind of success. So this is the idea of blessing successful people. There's a lot of people who are jealous of people who are wealthy, and if they meet somebody who's rich, they've got all these, he must have been lucky, or his parents must have given it to him, or he must have been deceitful, or he's ripped people off. People find lots of negative things for people who have attained wealth, but instead of that, turn it around. In your heart, bless them. Congratulations, well done, I also intend to become wealthy. Think like that. You must have said your sense of unhappiness comes from comparing yourself to others. So, if I'm not wealthy and I compare myself to a wealthy person, that makes me feel less, then of course that makes me feel unhappy. And, that's never going to help me, and it's not going to help me, go on the path towards wealth. He said, jealousy doesn't need effort, but blessing others does. Now, jealousy requires no learning. It is mastered naturally by instinct. However, blessing others, such as congratulating and praying for other people's happiness, usually requires being taught. So for us to be able to bless other people, it's something that we actually practice. It's a skill that we actually decide to do and actively make an effort to bless other people. As he said, jealousy doesn't need effort. It comes naturally. And even from when you're kids, when you're growing up, if you've got brothers or sisters or other kids in your class at school and someone does better than you in something, it's so easy to feel jealous. it's not so easy to bless them and say, hey, well done, you know, you beat me today. You know, so yeah, this is something that we just need to recognize as a part of a tendency, and to improve relationships and make our lives happier, bless other people. Yeah. So, you know, if we actually, as part of that blessing, if we see someone who's wealthy and we embrace that and we think, wow, that's great, I'm also going to be like that, we'll naturally attract that to us. You know, so when we embrace your ideal image, it acknowledges the direction that you're aiming for, and you will become. You know, like Master said, you are what you think about all day long, or you will become what you're thinking about. So if you're seeing something as your ideal and you're admiring something as your ideal, your mind will take you in that direction. On the opposite side of that, if you're jealous of something and think that that's, you know, I don't like that person, they're rich, it's, you know, then you're going to push yourself away from that ideal. And Master said, furthermore, by idealizing the other person, he will open up to you and advise you and guide you. Yeah, how wonderful. And, you know, this, it's so true in life, is that, as I said before, the people you meet. Actually, Master said in The Essence of Buddha, he was talking about fatalism, and similar to destiny, and he was talking about whether destiny and fatalism actually exist. And he said, well, with them there's 5 points that are there. And one is about your karma, or the tendency of your soul. So, you know, your destiny and what's going to happen in your life, whether everything's set or not set. He said, well, your karma is set. You know, your tendency of your soul. We've all got tendencies of our soul. That's sort of set. We can change our tendencies a little bit, and that's what we try to do through our lives. Recognise them and adjust them to become, you know, closer to the ideal. But second one was that, because there's 5 of these points, he said, that the second one was the family we're born into. We can't control that. I mean, we did before we were in heaven. We chose this family to be born into. But once we're born, that's our family, you know. So if we were born in to this family, and they're a wealthy family or a poor family or whatever, or they've got a particular way of thinking, there might be a Buddhist family, there might be a Christian family, a Muslim family, whatever it is, that's we're born into that family. The third one is the social environment we're born into, you know. If you're born into Australia, if you're born into Italy, if you're born into Africa, different countries, or even within the one country, you know, you could be born in a good neighbourhood or a bad neighbourhood, or, you know, so the environment you're born into as well. Those 3 factors you don't really have much chance to change. But he said the other 2, we do have an opportunity to affect our lives. And the fourth was the effort we make in our lives. So with destiny, our destiny is affected by the effort we make. If we make effort in our life, even if we were born into a bad environment and we're born into a poor neighbourhood, and, you know, it was hard to get ahead, then if we made effort all through our life, we could get out of that and do really well. We could get ahead, right? So that was the fourth one. Well, the fifth one, he said, it was help from other people, right? The influence of other people in your life. That can also change our destiny. You could meet somebody, and that person, now this is back to relationships, if you're a person that people like, they're going to want to help you. If you meet a rich person and you're blessing them and you're saying, well, I really admire you, I also want to do really well, you know. I work hard in my life and I'm going to make a lot of effort. I'm planning to, this is what I'd like to do. And you're telling me your dreams, and you're asking them, please, could you tell me a little bit about how you did it? Because I also would like to achieve some success in my life. If they like you, they're going to say, sure, I want to help you. I'll be your mentor. I'll give you a hand. Actually, I'd like to start a business, and I'd like to invest in you, you know. They might even put some money into helping you get ahead. If they meet you and they don't like you, and you're arrogant and you're rude, and, you know, they didn't like you for whatever reason, they're not going to want to help you. So once again, relationships can really help us get ahead, you know, even in this way of when people that we meet in our life, you know, that can make a difference to how our lives turn out. Yeah. So when it comes to solving a workbook of life with a heart to bless others, I'd like to, you know, touch on a point of how we can do that in all times and all situations. You know, how can we have the heart to bless others? Well, it's by treating it as our workbook of life, because with the overview that we have in Happy Science, right, that this world is a training ground for our souls, and that all the people in this world were born into this world from the spirit world with the intention of training and developing themselves. That essentially that we all come from one source, and we've all split off from the great tree of life, right? And I know you guys would have seen the idea of, I've got part of the lecture that you probably saw the other week, but talking about Alcantara and the tree of life, and how, you know, the tree of life is like this great tree, and there's branches that split off that could be the different you know, religions, and then there's other branches that could be different countries, and then these branches split off, and then you've got twigs that branch off, and there's leaves on that branch, and some of these are connected to ourselves. So, but essentially the whole tree is part of us, so everybody's connected, and everybody is just trying to do well. Everybody's trying to be happy. Everybody just wants to be happy. You know, I think it's really sad when you see people who are caught up in unhappiness on their way of trying to find happiness creates unhappiness, because, say for instance with drugs, you know, people take drugs because they want to be happy, right? That's why people are taking drugs, because at the moment when they take that drug it makes them feel happy. Oh, I feel happy. That's what I was looking for. I wanted to feel happy. But unfortunately later, when the effect of the drug wears off, they go below what they were. I mean, here might have been normal. They took the drug, they felt happy compared, but then afterwards they felt unhappy. So they felt worse than they did even before they took the drug. So, oh, I need to take that drug again to get back to how I was. So everybody just wants to be happy. So when we recognise that, a sort of compassion and wells up in the heart, wanting everybody to be happy, to realise everybody has struggles and problems and difficulties. Well, the wonderful teaching here in Happy Science is that, you know, this world's just a temporary world. It's a training ground for our soul, and it is supposed to be tough, and there will be difficulties, and it's just natural for us to feel a little unhappy while we're in amongst this environment of difficulty, being in a physical body. But once we understand that and realise it's just temporary, and eventually we return back to the other world, and the world of the spirit, you know, the heavenly world, where everything's, you know, wonderful freedom and a wonderful state of happiness of nirvana, then we can feel happy just knowing that we are undergoing our soul training. So the way to be able to bless others is to see that not everybody may have that perspective, but I've got that perspective, and if I can see that they themselves are just struggling through life, I really want them to be happy, because I know how difficult it is for them. And my perspective is that they're actually also just a soul undergoing soul training, and they may not know that, you know, and I'm lucky enough to actually know that in the fact, so it can make my life better. So if we can have the bigger view, it helps us to be able to bless other people, because we can see their lives as a struggle. And for many of them, they don't actually even know the truth. For them, they're just struggling without even understanding why they're struggling. Now, if they don't understand the idea of reincarnation and the fact that life is a training ground for your soul, it seems like endless struggle without a reason. Oh, those poor people. They're just struggling every day. They don't even have a reason. They don't even know why they're struggling. But they, oh, I feel so sorry. I want to tell them the truth. I want to take them, you know, this is where I want to tell them, don't worry, life's temporary. You're just training your soul. This is just part of your soul training. Everything's as it should be, you know. You just want to tell them the truth. So, whereas on the other hand, you know, if you're always caught up in someone's faults, ill words and jealousy, you cannot become happy. So please be willing to bless others. And we can bless others by seeing the fact that they themselves are undergoing soul training, and their lives are also a challenge for them. And their perspective for them is, you know, their perspective is their life is everything. I know I said this maybe a couple of months ago, but I'll say it again, because to me it's a really strong feeling. You know, sometimes when you might be on a bus or a train, or there might be a plane flying overhead, and you think, maybe you can't see someone on the plane flying overhead, but sometimes I think of people sitting in that plane. You see a plane flying overhead and you think, look, there's probably around about 300 people or so sitting on that plane, right? They're going to land at the airport. They don't even know that I'm looking at them right now, but each person sitting in their seat right now, their life is their life. Their whole life is their universe. Right, what's happening in their family, what's happening with their kids, what they're doing when they land, the place they're going, where they're staying, where they're going to eat tonight, what sort of work they're doing. Everything is so important to them, and yet they don't even know that I'm thinking about them. And for me, everything in my life is so important to me, and for each one of us, everything in our own life is so important. And each individual is the same, you know. As much as we meet and we create relationships with each other, each person's life is their own little universe. And if we can recognise that everybody has got that same way, that they will got all their issues and all their problems, all the things they're trying to deal with, and just wish them happiness, wish them to find success, wish them joy in their life, just because you yourself have got going through the same thing as your own little universe, and you want everything in your life to work out as well, then you can just have a heart of blessing for all people. Okay, so let's just hear Master Okawa talk about this. I think you might have seen a little bit of this excerpt maybe last week or so, but this is a fraction of it. Just talking about how we're all soulmates, and how we're all undergoing soul training, and that as we deeply understand that, we can really feel a blessing towards all people.
So when we think about the meaning of life, we must think about it very deeply. From now on, when you meditate, if you think about a particular person who left a very deep impression on you, I'd like you to ask yourself if that person actually has a special connection to your soul through fate. There are 20 to 30 people around you who are spiritually connected to you. And this is the group of people that will decide your happiness and unhappiness in life. Most of these people were destined to meet you in this life. There are people who you were certainly and absolutely destined to meet at least once in your life. The life training that that person offers is necessary for you. Some appear as kind supporters, while others teach you strictly or give you hardships. However, there are people that you absolutely must meet. In some ways, this is a workbook of problems in your life. In your workbook, you must meet this person and that one and that one. You carried forward some issue from a previous life, so you must settle it in this one. For example, in a past life, you were parent and child or husband and wife. But something came between you to cause great hatred. You must meet the person again in a different relationship to test what will happen this time. So when problems like love-hate relationships with someone who has a deep influence on your life occur, in most cases these are problems coming from a past life and a part of God's plan for you. So don't think that it's just happened to you in this life, but assume that there is something this problem should teach you. All souls are actually connected to each other. So in the competitive society of today, you may compete and win or lose. But remember that your opponents are not your absolute enemies or rivals. Many of them are people you have met many times in past lives. I want you to understand that all souls are spiritually connected to the great tree of life. That is why I preach to you about love. I tell you to love each other. And when I say that, I mean that you are not strangers to each other. Actually, we are all connected. Somewhere, at some point in time, your original life energy is connected, and many of you have met before in many different eras. When a new Dharma is taught, like it is now in this life, many of these people are reborn. During the period of Lamu, Thoth, Hermes, or Buddha, you all met before, and you are now meeting here with a different appearance or role, perhaps switching gender or swapping parent-child roles. You are a shoot from the same large branch. So it is a sin to hate and despise each other. This is a sin because it injures. It is said that the opposite of love is jealousy and hatred, but I want you to overcome it. You envy a person, but actually you are companions. In many cases, the person that you despise and feel hatred for has an extremely deep connection to you spiritually, and is someone you have met many, many times. So I tell you, stop hurting each other, stop speaking ill of others, stop hating, and instead, bless each other. Do these things for the sake of your own soul's development. Our religion, Happy Science, was created to teach that.
Yeah, you know, so if anyone ever asked why we should bless each other, there's the perfect reason, right? Because we're all connected. And when you bless another person, you're really blessing yourself. So this is, this is really the key points to today. Is we're just going to finish now with the meditation, which is for harmonizing human relationships. But just to cover those points, you know, the first one is to realize other perspective. Everyone has a different perspective. Try to see other people's perspective, and if you base your perspective on love, being able to see that, you know, everybody is, if we practice love that gives, that we can see their perspective from the true point of view, from the really way they're thinking, the way they're seeing things. The second point is to be able to see the strength in other people. You know, look for their strengths. Look for that 80% of them that you really like, and focus on that. And so then also be independent. You know, don't try to need other people. Don't be clingy with other people. Be an independent person that's found your own happiness. Be a person that wants to bring happiness to other people. You meet other people and you want to share your happiness with other people, but be an independent person. Don't feel like you need another person to complete you, or, you know, that you are a person that is bothering other people because, you know, you need their friendship. You know, your friendship is something wonderful. Your friendship is something you offer, but it's not something that you should need to make you happy. You have happiness and you want to share your happiness, and that's why we have our friendships. And the fourth stage was about blessing other people. Bless other people. Bless other people's happiness. Find happiness in other people's happiness. Do what you can to bring happiness to other people. And these 4 points will just create beautiful relationships. People you're with, that you're from your friends, to your partners, to your children, they'll just want to be with you, you know, because you will have seen the way that they're seeing things. You're telling them the truth about their good points. You're seeing their strengths and you're telling them their strengths. You might be able to also tell them in a nice way about their weaknesses, but that's done from a point of view of love. And then, but you're not clingy to them. It's not like I need you, and so I'm all embracing you. I need you in my life. You know, you're an individual, and they're an individual as well. And then when good things happen in people's life, you feel happy for them, and they see the happiness in you, and so their happiness becomes your happiness. And with these 4 things, relationships will just get better and better. So let's do this meditation with Master called Harmonizing Relationships. Thank you, Master Okawa. Okay.